Okay, hello, good day. So this will be our topic for midterm. Actually, I was how do you call this one? I was supposed to record earlier, however, yeah, I attempted twice, but it didn't go well. So this is my final attempt to record my discussion. But anyway, so yep, this will be our topic for midterms. Everything is in here. This will be the coverage. However, handouts will still be distributed for additional notes. Okay, so this is just how yeah it's explained. If you have any further questions, then you could ask me via comments or when we already have our face-to-face class. So I do hope that everybody is in safe and dry in good condition. Looking forward to um seeing you soon once the weather gets better. Okay. Anyway, so let's start. Our topic is about social responsibility and ethics in strategic management. So first off, um, how do you call this one? CSR or social responsibility. Eh, yeah, some say that it's not really that important and it's just all about the reputation and the branding. But why do we still need to understand or why do we still need to study about it? And of course, ethics. Because of course, when running a company, especially if you've got a big company, ethics is really very important because I mean, this will be the basis whether, or base of good governance, if you are really transparent in running the company, you're not fraud or you're not doing something bad. So we will be discussing the different views, approaches when it comes to ethical considerations. Okay, so let's start. So there are two views or contrasting views when it comes to the responsibilities of a business firm. So the first is Friedman's traditional view. It is being formulated or according to Milton Friedman, he advocated laissez-faire. So when you say laissez-faire, most probably you already encountered that during your social studies subject in high school, wherein the leader would just allow the employees to or the members to do their own thing because the boss or the leader understands or yeah thinks thinks that the members can do or can work on their own. Okay, so this is kind of similar. According to this one, he advocated laissez-faire economy with minimal government regulation. He argued against the idea of social responsibility within business, suggesting that actions like reducing prices to assist the poor or investing in pollution reduction are spending shareholder money for general social interests. So what does it mean? According to Friedman, the thing is we have to maximize our profit. The thing is the company should earn a lot so that it can be sustainable, it can be profitable. And I think spending some money or spending more money in philanthropic missions or helping out the society or the planet would somehow be an additional cost for the corporation or the company. So that means, hey, let's just skip that one and let's just focus on profit maximization. So let's just focus on earning a lot of money that the corporation or the company would be sustainable in terms of profits, in terms of money, in terms of economy. Okay. So that's the view of Milton Friedman. So he viewed the social responsibility of business as a fundamentally subversive doctrine, emphasizing that the business's sole responsibility, is to use resources and engage in activities that increase profits within ethical boundaries. So as long as we are not as long as we are not harming the others, as long as we are doing well, as long as we are not doing something bad, and we are earning a lot of money, then I think there's no problem in that. We don't have to help the others out. Because according to him, maybe this will be a problem in the long run because somehow the shareholders would be what affected because again it's the cost. It's kinda expensive, to venture into CSR. Okay, so that's the point of view of Friedman. Now, on the other hand, we have Carroll's core responsibilities. So while Friedman focused on profit maximization, William Byron and Archie Carroll introduced a broader perspective when it comes to CSR. So Byron argued that profits are a means to an end, um, not the end goal itself. So according to Byron, hey, the goal is not to only be sustainable when it comes to profits or when it comes to money, right? Like it's just a means, it's just a way for us to meet with a bigger goal. We have bigger goals, yep, and earning a lot of money and being profitable is just a way for us to reach the bigger goals of the corporation. And that is what they advocated. That's according to Byron and Carroll. So Carroll outlined four key responsibilities for business organizations. These are the economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary. Of course, for economic, it's more of the profits, about the income of the company, including producing valuable goods and services. Legal, of course, would be legalities like the corporation should abide by the law of the country and it should it should follow the rules. It should not bend or break the law. Okay. And for ethical responsibilities, it revolves around following societal beliefs. It's more on the social norms. And discretionary encompass the philanthropic activities, like they would want to help out already. If you remember our first lesson, it's about the um the profit, what's that? The triple bottom line, profit, planet, and people, right? So it encompasses this one, economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary. And actually, this diagram was being an activity of the BSA1. I asked them to interpret this economic, legal, ethical, discretionary. Yeah, I think also FM. I think so. So what does it mean, right? As you can see, economic is more on the profits. Legal would be about the laws. As you can see in there, economic and legal are in the first level or tier, right? Of the pyramid. Yeah. It's like this is the first level of the pyramid. That means a corporation should satisfy first the economic and legal framework or economic and legal things before they can move to ethical considerations and then help out. They could not, take note, they could not jump to ethics or help others if they did not satisfy or they are not sustainable or they did not follow the laws or they are not profitable. They could not just jump to the top if they did not satisfy the first and second level. Like, right? How can you be ethical if you could not even follow the laws of the country? How can a corporation be ethical if they are not sustainable when it comes to profit? They lack money. It's just like in the Filipino saying, like, bago mo tulungan ang iba, kailangan tulungan mo muna ang sarili mo, right? Before you can help others, you yourself should be sustainable, should have a stable job, you eat 3 times a day. Your basic needs should be satisfied first before you could help the others. Just like in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? At the top tier, it's the self-actualization. Well, you could not just jump to the self-actualization level if you are hungry or if you fear for your life. How can you help the others if you yourself are in danger, right? That's the counterpart in when it comes to individuals. But for the corporation, this is the framework: economic and legal first, and then move to ethical, and then discretionary. So you could not help the others if you could not help yourself first, or if you could not even follow the laws. How can you be ethical, right? If you could not even follow simple rules or legalities, legal paperwork in establishing your company, right? Okay. So these are the four things. And yeah, Carol emphasized the significance of fulfilling social responsibilities beyond economic and legal obligations, highlighting the evolving nature of ethical and discretionary duties in response to societal values. As you can see, it's the highest, discretionary is the highest. Okay? So it's just like it overlaps with our triple bottom line, right? People, profit, and planet. Of course, first things first, you have to be profitable, you have to be sustainable when it comes to profit maximization, or when it comes to your or utilizing your resources. Okay. Now, moving on to the benefits of social responsibility. So number one is enhanced reputation. So of course, it's yeah, just I told you earlier, like companies, they some of us would think that hey, a company would involve in CSR because it's more of their branding, to have a good reputation. Yeah, that's a plus point. Well, but it's not only about making pabango to the name. It's not only about that. Why? Before you can proceed to CSR, unless you are sustainable, unless your company is stable, you could not proceed to CSR. So that means you already have the uh capacity, you know, if you are sustainable, if your company is big enough and can sustain on its own, then you can be involved already in CSR. And that means, hey, that's a good reputation. That means what? It moves to stronger relationships. I think because they're already involved in CSR, I would like to invest in that company because that means they are stable. So they build stronger relationships with the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Of course, the suppliers, distributors, yeah, investors, yeah, something like that. So they would have stronger relationships because there will be no more intensive contract monitoring. Why? Why don't we need to have an intensive contract monitoring? Well, you're involved in CSR. You're rich. I mean, uh, your company earns billions, so you could not involve in CSR if you're not that good, if you are not that stable, right? So I would be trusting you. I will be trusting uh your company. I will be investing, or I will pursue with my transactions with you because you've got a good reputation. Okay? So there you go. Number three is attracting top talent. So of course, there will be a bigger chance to get a high caliber pool of talent. What do you mean? If you are a skilled and highly how do you call this one? Uh highly skilled and highly qualified person. You're doing your best. I mean, you're at the top of your career. People say good things about you, the quality of your work. Then, of course, you yourself would want to be associated with a big company, right? With an inner multinational company or a big company that involves in CSR, right? So I would, of course, since you know that you are the best in your career, you are the best or in your field, then you would want to be also associated with the best company, to somehow, uh, for you to somehow make use of your skill, right? Okay, so next one, yeah, some companies would be Procter and Gamble and Starbucks. Number four, favorable treatment in foreign markets. They also receive favorable treatment in foreign markets like Levi Strauss and benefit from public official support during challenging times. If you remember during the economic downturn about of this, the case study of Toyota, right? The king or the king of Thailand would like to buy a massive amount or number of cars, Toyota cars, because he doesn't like Toyota to fire employees because of the Great Depression, because of the, yeah, how I forgot the term. Oh yeah, economic downturn, something like that. He doesn't like for Toyota. He doesn't like Toyota to fire Thai employees because that would lead to massive what massive job loss, and of course Thai's economy would also, you know, would also fail. Or uh yeah, the more eh, I mean the problem will be more difficult if that happens. But what did Toyota do, right? They gifted the car, they gifted the car to the king, and then the money, instead of using it in its Toyota Thailand branch, they just built a what a rice mill that would benefit the farmers of Thailand. And that is a very good thing, that a very wise thing that Toyota did. Why? Because since Thailand is also an agriculture country, it would be really beneficial for the local farmers to have a rice mill to increase production and to somehow counter the economic downturn, right? Okay, so that's a good example under number four. I do hope you understood that one. All right, so before we proceed, I will be posting a question. Okay, I will be posting a question, or posting, not really, flashing a question in here. There you go. I will not read. So that's my question, and I need you to answer that in the submission bin in the Google Classroom. For me to really see whether you watched this video, this lecture video or not. Okay, so all right. Okay. So moving on. So now we have sustainability. So sustainability has a broader concept. I told you earlier about the triple bottom line. It's about profit, planet, and people. But do you know that according to Crane and Matten, they highlighted that the concept of sustainability should be broadened to include economic and social considerations alongside environmental ones. And they argue that if they wanted to address the sustainability of the natural environment or the planet, it is often necessary, or it's often important. It is a necessary thing to do to address first the social and economic aspects, okay, of the relevant communities and their activities. Oh, why? Why can't we just jump to the planet thing, or to the natural environment, in saving the natural environment without addressing the social and economic aspect? Think about it. If you are not profitable, if the company is not profitable itself, can it help the others? Of course not. I reiterated that again. I discussed, or I mentioned that earlier, right? You couldn't help the others if you couldn't help yourself. So the thing is, you have to be sustainable when it comes to profit. And then once you already have that, then you could help the people first. Why? Do you remember during the Industrial Revolution, right? after the Great Depression. It was the time when a lot of countries, the US and yeah, are developing countries wherein they exploited the natural resources. They mined the coal, massive deforestation happened to produce lumber and timber, you know, so that there will be more production, there will be more jobs for the people of that country. So what does it mean? They exploited the natural resources because there is a need for the society to be uplifted. There's a need for the society to uh solve first their problems before solving the planet, right? So of course, you as the company, you should address first the needs of the people living in that particular area. If you wanted to, let's say for example, if you wanted to help the people in this kind of mountain wherein deforestation occurred, there are no more lumber, there are no more trees. Most probably it's because the people in there living are those also who did this deforestation. They cut down trees for them to live, right? So of course you as the company you should help them out so that they can be sustainable. And then once they are good, then you can help the planet, okay? Because they don't need already to, to do this deforestation thing. They 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 don't need to cut down trees just to survive. You get what I mean? So again, take note. Before you can help the planet, you should address first the profit and the people. Okay? There you go. I do hope you understood my explanation. So Dow Jones Sustainability Index, they develop a sustainability index that takes into account not only environmental factors but also economic and social ones. And sustainability and business responsibilities. The broader concept of sustainability has much in common with Carroll's list of business responsibilities. Of course, it satisfies economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary responsibility. Now, why are there some unethical behavior? Okay, why? So, first reason is that in most cases, we have different cultural background. We have cultural differences. We have different ethical standards. Take a look just in our country. Take a look at the Philippines. We are an archipelagic country wherein we live in different islands, and you know, in some places like um fixed marriage is acceptable, or even child marriage is acceptable, but for us, for yeah, maybe there's a minority group, that's their culture. But for us, we look down to it, we frown at it. For us, it's unethical for a child to marry an adult one. But we couldn't do anything because that's the culture of that minority group, right? So there is a cultural difference when it comes to ethical standards. What might be ethical in one place might not be ethical in another place. Let's say, for example, in the Western countries, it's ethical for them to do abortion or euthanasia. But us here in the Philippines, we frown at it. It's against the law, right? It's against the law to do abortion. Or euthanasia is not possible here because it's not acceptable, and maybe the doctors involved might be sued in condoning such activities, right? So that's something, we have different cultural backgrounds and different ethical standards. So an interpretation of one can be different from the other. So I am trying my best to speak in English because I know that we have international students that might not understand Tagalog. So yeah, Filipino students, just bear with it. Okay. Next one is value discrepancies and ethical conflicts. So another reason for perceived unethical behavior lies in the divergence of values between business people and key stakeholders. When you say divergence, it's a different one. Okay. So Most probably business people would prioritize profit maximization, whereas for the stakeholders, they wanted to help the others, the society. So of course, again, business people would think, hey, it's another part of the cost, that's another expenses to be addressed. Why? We're doing well. As long as we are earning a lot, then why should we do that? But for the others, for the stakeholders, just like this one, minority hiring, neighborhood safety, they wanted to contribute something to the uh society. So let's say, for example, about minority hiring. So as you can see, in most cases, when you say minority, in the Philippines, in most cases, they are the underprivileged. So maybe they just not really just, but yeah, maybe they had a hard time getting themselves educated, or maybe in some cases they are illiterate. So of course it would be against like the qualifications needed by the company, but they wanted to give an impact. And for business people, hey, why should you hire that one? I think he's not skilled. I think we will still spend more on training him. We will spend more on, or maybe he will commit mistakes, and there will uh the company might incur losses. But for the stakeholders, hey, let's give him a chance because we wanted to help. So those are two different values being seen between business people and the stakeholders. And of course, the business pressures and ethical dilemmas. Of course, the financial community's emphasis on short-term earnings performance puts significant pressure on executives to manage quarterly earnings. So somehow, of course, they wanted to maximize the profit. In some cases, there is a tendency for them to what? There's a tendency for them to uh bend the rules, or maybe there is a tendency for them to cheat. Okay, what do you call that again? Unethical, yeah. There's a tendency for them to have unethical actions because they're having, or they are undergoing severe pressures to earn a lot. Okay, so that's the thing. So let's take a look at the frogs in boiling water analogy. Okay, the text concludes with a powerful analogy: the frogs in boiling water. So what's about the frogs in boiling water? Imagine that a frog is being put in a pot of water and then put it under heat. So for the frog would not jump out of the water because he can still tolerate, kaya pa niyang tiisin yung init kasi hindi pa naman boiling point. So so the frog just stayed there only to find out that he's already on the point of no return. What does it mean? It's already deadly. The heat, it's already in the boiling point. To the water is already in its boiling point that immediately the frog dies. Okay, he's already in danger, and it's too late to realize. So what's the analogy to that in unethical behavior? In a corporation, they turn a blind eye to some small things, small unethical behavior, because for them, oh, it's just a small thing. It's just a small amount. Like let's say for example, you are running a restaurant or a hotel, and then the employees in the restaurant would somehow sneak out some food because they're hungry, or they are not honest in writing down the records or whatsoever. Or let's say, yeah, they somehow bring home some food from the pantry, which is supposedly the food that they should cook in the restaurant. So of course that's some kind of loss, a small loss in the restaurant. But the restaurant managers thinks that, hey, it's just okay. It's just a minimal amount. It's just a small amount. So it's, yeah, let it be. Let's just let it pass. And then in the end, it becomes massive. It becomes, or it escalated. to the point that it's not only about the food missing. It can be an equipment, or it can be machines, or a big amount of money in the restaurant was stolen because it was tolerated in the beginning. Because the organization thinks that it's just a small amount, it's just a minute detail. Malit na bagay lang yan, hindi naman na yan masyadong malaki, 'di ba? Okay lang yan, malit na bagay. Let it pass. And then only to find out it escalated, and then the problem becomes very severe. And yeah, there's the point of no return. So it says when you say incrementally, the unethical behavior is being done in small amounts, just a small detail. Okay. One example, how can you counter the how can you counter the corrupt officials who steal a lot of money from the taxpayers' money, right? If the small things like the cotton of the police and the traffic enforcers maybe is being tolerated by the management, by the government. It's being done in small amounts. It's just a small thing. Oh, titiketan kita, parang gano'n. Basta, hindi na kita titiketan, basta magbigay ka na lang ng lagay. So, those small things already adding up. It's incremental. It's small amount. But then, there, if it's being accumulated, it's being accumulated into one spot, it becomes a massive problem. Okay, that's the analogy of the frogs in boiling water. Okay, so even that means even if you're the manager someday, even though it's just a small thing that is unethical, you should reprimand it. You should take action to prevent it in the future. You should address the problem at once. Okay? Now, moving on to Kohlberg's levels of moral development, we have three different levels. The pre-conventional level, when you say pre-conventional level, it is characterized by the concern of self. I am afraid to be punished, so I will behave. It's just like you're a child and you do something because you're afraid that your mom or your teacher will get angry at you. Okay? You're just following the rules because you don't want to be scolded or you don't want to be punished. That is the quid pro quo. That's the meaning of quid pro quo. It's just like I will do something in return, there's a reward, or I will not do something because in the end I don't want to be punished. Yeah, that's the pre-conventional level. But when you say the conventional level is the second level, so what does it mean? It's about the society's laws and norms. Actions are justified by an external code of conduct. So let's say, for example, if you're a professional teacher, you have this code of conduct that you could not, um, you could not take a video of your students for data privacy, for the privacy of your students. Um, yeah, if you remember the viral thing about the nurse who took a video, who vlogged about her patient. Oh, that's a big no-no. And the nursing community or the nurse community frowned at her, and the school reprimanded her because it is part of the code of conduct of nurses to protect the privacy of the what? Of the patients. That's the conventional level. You follow because you should follow the society's laws and norms. Even though you will not be punished, you know that it's against the laws and the norms. You don't want to be an outcast of the society because you did something wrong. That is the conventional level. But when you say the principled level, it is more on the integrity. You have this integrity because this is your moral. These are already your values. This level is characterized by a person's adherence to an internal moral code. An individual at this level looks beyond norms or laws to find universal ethical principles. Okay, so you do this or that, you do this thing because that is according to your values and not because it's against the law. No, somehow there's this thing that you have to be ethical. I mean, you have to do an action. Okay? Uh, but if you did something, if you did something, the consequence is that you will not be punished. You just bend the law or something like that. Okay, that's the principled level. So regardless of whether there's a punishment or not, regardless of whether there's an external code of conduct, you do this action because these are your values. So let's say, for example, students gifting teachers. Okay, so in my part, of course, I don't know what's the intention of the other students, but maybe they appreciate me as their instructor. That's why they give gifts or they give some coffee or a cup of coffee, and I highly appreciate it. But I make it to the point that I will tell them that, hey, this doesn't mean that if you gave me a cup of coffee or if you gave me gifts that you will have a passing grade. Okay, so this doesn't mean anything at all. I just accepted it out of gratitude, and I am happy that you appreciate my efforts. But if you go beyond that, if you expect me to pass you despite of your what's that, lack of responsibility or being irresponsible in submitting the requirements, not studying, you get what you deserve. You get what you deserve. You get you get the grade that you deserve, despite of the gifts that you will give me. That is my principle. Okay, I am already in this principle level. Regardless whether you give me or not, whether you did something wrong to me or not, whether whether you somehow disrespected me. But in my case, I will not take that against you. If you deserve to pass, then you pass. Okay, that's how I do it. Okay, so there you go. So those are the three levels or Kohlberg's levels of moral development. Okay, now moving on to the codes of ethics. What's the purpose? To clarify company expectations regarding employee conduct and emphasize companies' expectations that employees recognize the ethical dimensions of their decisions and actions. Okay, so it's more on the company expectations about the employees' conduct, codes of ethics. Okay. Now moving on to the views on ethical behavior, we have three. So first is the utilitarian approach. Okay, what's that? Utilitarian approach focuses on judging actions based on their outcomes. Behavior should aim to benefit society the most and cause the least harm. However, this approach may overlook the interests of less powerful stakeholders. What does that mean? Okay, like according to the utilitarian approach, majority wins. So the thing is, the level of the everybody should be happy. Majority of people should be happy. Okay, so yeah, this is like the concept of majority wins. Majority wins. So the core principle of utilitarianism is to maximize overall happiness. Happy ka? Yes, happy ka. Happy tayong lahat. Yan, utilitarian approach yon. Okay? Uh, as long as it produces positive outcomes. Okay? What, what are the key concepts? The greatest happiness principle, according to Jeremy Bentham, okay, states that actions are right if they promote happiness and wrong if they produce unhappiness. Basic, di ba? Basta masaya ka, di why not? Okay. So, importante, masaya tayong lahat. Ganun yon yung utilitarian approach. And, okay, so we have different things. Act utilitarianism. This approach focuses on the consequences of individual actions, evaluating each action based on its potential to maximize utility. What does it mean? The end justifies the means. Um, kahit na hindi magandang intention, ang importante yung output. The ends justify the means. Okay? Even though it's even though the action is not kinda acceptable, even though it's not acceptable, the thing is the outcome should give happiness to everybody. Okay, that's the um meaning of act utilitarianism. Rule utilitarianism, so it emphasizes on the general rules. It argues that rules maximize utility should be followed, even if a specific action might lead to a slightly better outcome. Okay. Basta rules, following the rules. Okay. Now, I will give you an example about the utilitarian approach. So imagine that you are a doctor. Okay, you are a doctor, a very, very good doctor. And then you have five patients, limang pasyente mo. So, uh, each patient needs to have a needs to have an organ transplant. So maybe patient one needs a heart bypass, patient two needs a kidney transplant, patient three needs a lung transplant or whatsoever. Okay, so five yon. Lima silang pasyente mo na nangangailangan ng organs, internal organs. Then suddenly, there's this one healthy individual who came to your hospital. And then suddenly you decided, hey, let's kill this person, get his organs, and then transplant it to the five patients. I think that is a good scenario because majority wins. Five patients would be happy, which contradicts to only one patient who will be killed. Okay, so it's just like that. That's utilitarianism or utilitarian approach. Like the concept is that the most important thing is the majority should be happy, even though the means would not be acceptable. Just like that one. Biruin mo, dumaan ka lang sa ospital, iabdak ka para kunin lahat ng organs mo, wala ka namang ginagawa at ita-transplant mo sa hindi mo naman kakilalang pasyente na lima. Para ano? Para mabuhay sila at ikaw mamamatay kasi mag-isa mo lang na healthy. So, ibig sabihin, yung isa nag-sacrifice na healthy kontra dun sa limang may sakit na gumaling. Yun ang utilitarian approach. Gets po ba? Gets po ba? So, if you have questions again, just comment, give or type your comments in the stream below the posted video. Okay? Now, moving on. So, of course, we have limitations, difficulty in measuring happiness. Okay? Malamang, happiness is subjective. Para sa isang tao, masaya na siya na nag-Jollibee. Para sa ibang tao, mahirap, mahirap siyang pasayahin. Gusto niya ang nagpapasaya sa kanya achievement. So, how can you quantify happiness? How can you quantify the well-being of these individuals? It's an abstract concept. And it is what? Subjective. Parang beauty lang yan. Maaaring sa akin, maganda siya. Sa iba, pangit siya. Parang ganun sa happiness. Maaaring, ang maliit na bagay lang yan, pero nagpapayasaya sa kanya. Yung iba naman, pera ang nagpapasaya sa kanya o kailangan malalaking magagarbong bagay ang nagpapasaya sa kanya. So, again, it's kind of difficult in measuring happiness and it's subjective. Okay? Of course, there is also the potential for injustice. Just like what happened to the healthy individual, yung nag-iisa na biglang papatayin, it's unjust, right? You will just be sacrificed for the sake of the other five patients. You are not doing something wrong. You just came in and healthy and you don't know what happened next. You are already killed for your organs. So that's unjust, right? Also, utilitarianism focuses solely on consequences, neglecting the importance of intentions and moral character. Kasalanan or, di ba, in-overlook nila. Nakasalanan pumatay. Diba? Kasi para lang maisalba yung lima. So, yun yun. So, okay. Moving on. Now, moving on to individual rights approach. This is, yeah, you have, I think you're familiar with that because in the Philippine law, we have our human rights. We have our individual rights. We have our right to education. We have our right to property. We have our right to dignity, right? Hindi pwede tayong mamahiya, right? So individual or hindi hindi what I mean is hindi mo pwedeng ipahiya ang isang tao na wala namang ginagawa. Parang ganon. Na sisiraan mo na siya. Bawal yon. Individual rights approach yan emphasizes respecting fundamental human rights in decision making. Challenges arise in defining these rights universally and may lead to selfish behavior if personal desires are considered rights. Okay, so what's the key concept? Okay, ang sinabi ko na nga kanina na each and every one of us as a Filipino citizen, we have our individual rights. We have our human rights. Na kahit na may ginawa ka ngang kasalanan, even though you are a criminal, you are accused of doing something wrong, unless you are being convicted, you are uh innocent unless proven guilty. That is our Philippine law. Kaya ah yun yung yun yung downside nga kasi kahit na may ginawa kang kasalanan, not until you have the verdict that you are guilty, then you are still innocent. Just like Alice Guo, right? She's not yet proven guilty. So it's just like she's still innocent despite of those lies that she's saying or she's telling us. Okay? So yeah, natural rights, these are rights that are inherent to all human beings, such as the right to life, right to liberty and property. What's the right to life? We have the right to live. We have the right to live our own life. Nobody should dictate that, hey, you should be killed. No, we don't. That's such a we don't condone that. Okay, it's not acceptable. That's why killing is a sin. Killing is against the law because you already uh what overpowered the other human rights if you killed somebody. So, right to liberty, there are no slaves in the Philippines. We are not subject to slavery, unlike before during the hmm, Spanish occupations, maybe the Indios, or maybe the Black Americans, or the African people, they were taken as slaves. They don't have, the right to liberty. So we are kind of blessed to live in this era because at least we have our human rights and we are not subject to slavery. And of course, right to property that everybody can own as long as you can afford it, you can own such properties, whether big or small. So yeah, the law permits you to do so. Okay. Next one is the universal rights. Individual rights are considered universal, applying to all individuals regardless of their race, gender, religion, or social status. So everybody is equal. Everybody has their individual rights. The LGBT community, the male, the men and male and female employees should have equal rights in a company, equal opportunities. If you belong to a minority group, that's not a problem. You still have this individual rights. Okay? You have the right to choose your own religion. Nobody could dictate you. Despite of you being a Roman Catholic or a Muslim, you have this individual right. Okay? So that's individual rights approach. Negative rights, these rights protect individuals from interference by others. So one example is the right to freedom of speech. So alam niyo na yan, Filipinos are keyboard warriors. They can say a lot of things if that's their opinion. As long as they don't say or as long as they don't tarnish or they don't say false things or fake things against another person, then that is acceptable because that is his opinion. Like let's say for example, in my opinion, I don't like the current president current president's administration because like this and like that, you know. Or oh no, for me, I think he's doing the right thing. He's just doing the right thing. Despite of the problems, I think it's acceptable. But I will not say, hey, Bongbong is an addict. that I do not have how do you call this one? I do not have enough evidence to accuse such person like that. So if I did that, if I tell that to the public, he might sue me for oral defamation. So that is not freedom of speech. But if you just give your opinion without causing or without implying negative things or fake things or telling fake news, then you're good. Because that's just your opinion. You have the right to do so. And that is negative, right? Because the government could not interfere with your opinion. That's what they napansin. Yan, alam mo eh, yan ang paniniwala mo eh. So, natama ka eh. Opinion mo yan, walang magagawang gobyerno. Kung kahit hindi ka masaya sa current government, opinion mo yan eh. As long as hindi ka naninira. Ganun yun. So, that's the negative articles on negative right. For the positive rights, these rights require others to provide certain goods or services to individuals. For example, the right to education is a positive right because it requires the government to provide educational opportunities for all citizens. Okay. Now, let's take a look again at our previous example about the organ transplant scenario. So, under the individual rights approach, it is morally wrong to harvest or to kill a healthy individual's organs just to save the other five. It's against his human right. You know, you will analyze him just to get his healthy organs just to save the other five. Bakit? Anong ginawa niyang kasalanan? Anong ginawa niya para gantihan ng ganun, para gawan ng ganun, para lang maisalba yung majority? So, yun yung paniniwala. That's the perspective under the individual rights approach. So this approach prioritizes the individual's right to bodily autonomy and self-determination. What's the meaning of bodily autonomy? You can do whatever you want to your body, right? You can stay healthy, or you can just smoke and kill yourself slowly, or you can just you can put a tattoo everywhere. That's your right. You know, you have the right to your own body. Going back to euthanasia. So, in other countries, ito na yung conflicting scenario. In other countries, I told you, that euthanasia is legal. Because, according to them, it's their individual right. They have this body autonomy, you know, autonomy to unalive themselves, to do so, to unalive themselves. They could not do anything or they don't want to endure the pain. They have the right to do so to end their life. But in here in the Philippines, it is against the law. Okay? So, dito napapasok yung conflicting scenarios, conflicting ng values, cultural values. Okay? So, yon. Huh? So now, moving on to, yeah, another thing, limitations pala. So, conflicting rights, I told you earlier, situations arise where individual rights conflict with each other. Okay? Another scenario under this one, if you remember the viral thing about the LGBT community na tinawag siyang, he was called she, he was called sir. And then this LGBT member scolded the waiter and discussed about the LGBT rights. So who is in the wrong? So a lot of people frown at the LGBT person. Why? Because he affected or he overstepped. He stepped on the rights of the waiter. His right to dignity. Pinahiya niya eh. Kalain mong hindi niya ano yun, hindi niya pinaupo, pinatayo niya magdama or maghapon. Parang ginawa niyang bata tapos nilecturean niya about the LGBT rights. So, that is a conflicting right. Saan na nga ba lulugar? What will happen? These LGBT people would want to be heard, would want to be accepted by the society. However, in some cases, they go overboard to the point that they also affect the rights, step on the rights of the other people. Just like in the Miss Universe pageant, right? They already allowed trans and whatsoever. Um, uh, some people view it as like unethical, not really unethical, but it's unfair because why? The pageant should be solely for women only. It's about the essence of being a woman. But because the trans people, the LGBT community would want to be accepted and they think that they're women because they believe they are women. They wanted to be part of that pageant. So that those are two contradicting views. Doon na nagka-clash dahil parehas silang merong pinaglalaban na individual rights. Class, I do hope that you understand my examples. Okay? So next one. Of course, difficulty in defining rights. There is ongoing debate about which rights are fundamental and how they should be defined. Okay. And of course, potential for individualism. The individual rights approach can sometimes lead to excessive individualism, neglecting the importance of social responsibility and collective well-being. So it's like more on, yeah, somehow there should be a border between individualism and the utilitarian approach. Dapat patas lang. Kaya yun yung mahirap i-define. Hanggang saan? Kasi may kanya-kanyang pinaglalaban ang mga tao na mga karapatan. Okay? And that is why we have our legal system or judicial system, I mean, wherein lahat papanigan or lahat titignan. Both parties should be heard. And let's now move on to the justice approach. Hopefully, everybody arrives to this justice approach. It advocates for fairness and impartiality in distributing costs and benefits among individuals and groups. It includes principles like distributive justice, fairness, retributive justice, and compensatory justice, which can sometimes conflict. However, yeah, there's still conflict. Kaya nga may judicial system tayo. For example, sino yung nasasaktal or sino yung, or let's say for example, a person is being sued by like this and like that, there's this due process. I told you earlier that um a person who is being sued, accused, is still innocent until proven guilty. And how can they arrive to guilty or not guilty? There's this due process. Everybody should undergo the due process. Proseso yan. Hindi basta-basta yung hindi basta-basta yung hinatulan mo na porque sinumbong na pinatay niya yung ganito, may ebidensya ka ba? Hindi, naniniwala lang ako kasi hindi ko siya bet eh. Kaya hatulan ko na lang siya na guilty. Kahit wag na natin siya pakinggan. No, that's not it. That's not the due process. Everybody, both parties should undergo the due process para lahat mapakinggan. Both sides should be heard, should be listened to without impartiality or without partiality or being fair. It should be fair. I mean, you should advocate for fairness and equality. Okay? So, ayan. That's why a lot of people would say that, oh, unfair si Tulfo. Kasi hinatulan na siya sa TV. Naghatol na siya, sinabi na niyang guilty yung kino-complain kahit na hindi pa naman talaga pinakinggan yung both sides. Parang nahatulan na yung kino-complain dahil feel lang yung kinatulan at naka-on air sila. Hindi yun due process. Okay? Medyo may problem sila doon. Okay? So, yun. The justice approach focuses on fairness and the equitable distribution of benefits and burdens. It seeks to ensure that individuals are treated fairly and that everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. So we have key concepts. First is the distributive justice. Justice concerns the fair allocation of resources. Patas lang tayo. Diba we have our laws. If you will be having your law subject under Ma'am Christie, like for example, an illegitimate child, can he still according to the Philippine law, can he still inherit something from his dad even though he is an illegitimate child? Paano yung hatian ng magkakapatid, mga legal children? Paano yung mga illegitimate or legitimate legal children? Paano yung mga legitimate children and the illegitimate children? Paano ang hatian? So, yun yung distributive justice. Everybody should have or should be equally given the opportunities and resources. Kung anong pinag-uusapan. Fair. Fairness and equality. Retributive justice, this type focuses on punishment. So, mata sa mata, ngipin sa ngipin, or death penalty or whatsoever. That's why we have our laws. Ano ba? Pinag-aaralan ng judicial system natin. Ganito yung ginawa niya. Gaano siya katagal makukulong? Eto, nagnakaw lang. Gaano siya katagal makukulong at meron ba siyang babayarang pera? Eto, death penalty na ba to? Grabe na ba? Heinous crime ba yung ginawa niya? Kaya that is retributive justice. Okay? Ibibigay na sa naayon sa gravity ng kasalanan yung punishment. Okay? Next, restorative justice. This type of justice emphasizes repairing harm and restoring relationships after a crime has been committed. Okay. So ito naman, yeah, uh, ito yung parang mag-aano kayo sa barangay captain, ano yung tawag doon, areglo, ayan. Magkakaroon na lang ng areglohan. For example, na may nabangga, mag-areglo sa barangay, babayaran ko na lang yung mga ganito, ganyan, yung pagpaparepair ng sasakyan mo, ganito, ganyan. O di kaya, let's say for example, yung aso ng isang kapitbahay or a dog of a neighbor bit a child. So, and of course, the parent of the child will complain in front of the neighbor, the owner, the owner of the dog. So it's still like, okay, you should pay for the medical expenses, the injection of the child, while your dog should be put under strict supervision, whether he or it or whether it has rabies, and if it has rabies, then it should be killed. Something like that. So that is part of restorative justice. Okay, now moving on to the example about the organ transplant. The justice approach might consider factors such as relative need of the patients, their contributions to the society, and potential impact of their deaths to their families. So under the justice approach, they will look into the different angles. Are these five patients very important people? What will happen if they will die? What will happen to the society? Do they give a very big impact to the society that if we lost them, it's a very big problem? Or maybe another thing, this is the best one. Under the justice approach, they will find other ways to find organ donors and not just sacrifice that one healthy individual. They will have find alternative ways to save the other five. That is part of the justice approach. Because why? Of course, they have to also protect the rights, the individual rights of that one healthy individual. Okay? So now, moving on to the limitations, difficulty in defining fairness. Defining what constitutes a fair distribution of benefits and burdens can be challenging as different perspectives on fairness exist. So let's say for example, like yeah, there is a person committed murder and he murdered a neighbor's son, and of course the parent were is in anguish. But the thing is, he did not do it. He did not do it on purpose. Might be an accident. So the one who killed that person wasn't really, I mean, he doesn't have the intention, maybe just an accident. So would it be fair if he will have this death penalty, right? But it was just an accident. So, but to the father of the son who was murdered, who was killed, for him, he wants death penalty because according to him, this is fair to me. My son was unalive. My son is now gone because of that neighbor who committed that accident, who accidentally unalived my son. So for me, this is fair to me. I lost my son's life, so he should will also lose his life. So take a look at that conflict, right? Now, moving on to the potential for conflict, justice considerations can sometimes lead to conflict, particularly when competing claims for resources. Of course, ayan, agawan sa lupa, alam nyo na yan. Lack of focus on individuals' rights. The justice approach can sometimes neglect the importance of individual rights in its pursuit of fairness. Okay, now, this will be my question. Second question, I will be flashing it in the screen, on the screen, sorry. I will be flashing it on the screen. I will not read it. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay. Moving on to the last slide, ethical framework. So we have two things, two ethical frameworks. We have Kavana's three questions. So before you do something, before you do a very important decision, first, under utility, does it maximize satisfaction for all stakeholders? Okay. Is it beneficial under the rights? Does it respect the rights of individuals involved? And justice, is it consistent with the principles of justice? Is it fair and square? Okay, so that's under Kavana's three questions. You have to pose these three questions for you to identify which decision should be the best. And of course, Kant's two principles. First is the universalizability. Is an action is ethical if one is willing to everyone, willing for everyone in a similar situation to do the same. It aligns with the golden rule of treating others as they wish to be treated. Okay. For universalizability, if everybody conforms, if everybody agrees to it, then it is ethical. And again, under the golden rule, don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. Yeah. So there you go. That's the golden rule. You if you wanted to if you wanted to be respected, then you need to treat everyone with respect, something like that. Okay, that is universalizability. For respecting humanity, actions should never use others as a means to an end, but always as an end in themselves. This principle emphasizes treating individuals with respect and not exploiting them for personal gain. So of course, you should not abuse people. You should not exploit them. Okay, you should treat everyone with respect. Okay. Um, take a look at this one. Actions should never use others as a means to an end. You should not use a person to your own benefit. Just like, wag mong, wag mo siyang gagamitin. Ayan, wag kayong maggamitan. Ayan, para maintindihan ng mga Pinoy na estudyante ko. Wag kayong maggamitan. Okay? Wag mo siyang gagamitin for your own benefit. Yun lang yun. Do not exploit, wag kang abuso, but as an end in themselves. Okay? So, there. That's our topic under midterms. So, if you have questions, feel free to ask. Comment under the screen in our VCR. Okay? So, see you around. Bye.